Thank you, Al. I'm going to start us off. Yes, that's there. So Marian and I have written a paper, and we've submitted it, which is why we're here, but we're going to actually try a slightly different model today. We have only 5 slides, and we've reduced our paper really to a minimum. And why is this? Well, we hosted a conference. We came together, the War Trauma Foundation in the Netherlands, which is Marian's organization, and my own organization, the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, last year, following a number of conversations which we had with one another, which were really looking at how exactly what Barry is saying. We bring closer together the work that Marian's organization broadly is doing and the work we're doing, which is peace building and mental health and psychosocial support. And for IJR, it was really interesting for me. I've been at the organization for 8 years, very, very little work done so far on sort of psychosocial support, recognizing that South Africa is a deeply wounded country, and certainly not sort of replicating the learning that we had done in South Africa to other countries we were working on in the continent. And I, in my own work in South Sudan, as well as in Uganda, sort of felt very strongly that we needed to integrate a trauma lens onto our work in order to be more effective. And so we met one another, and it just so happened that the War Trauma Foundation, which also, the journal of which intervention, which I'm sure many of you know, which is edited by Marian, had just done a sort of a content analysis, and that content analysis of the last 10 years showed that in actual fact there had been very little writing on bringing those two concepts together. So we thought, perfect, let's have a conversation about this. And really what emerged was a conference we hosted last year in Johannesburg. We were really honored to have Barry and others there, and certainly Barry's writing and thinking, and that of some others, and we'll talk about a special edition of Intervention, which I think is quite relevant here, has significantly shaped our thinking. And so I feel, in a sense, a little bit uncomfortable about being here when Barry is, in a sense, the father of some of this thought. But I also think that it's really important that he has disciples around the world who are sort of pushing the agenda further, and especially in Africa, where these conversations really are not having had, despite the sort of widespread nature of trauma. So very briefly, our paper is based on the conference report we hosted last year, at which we had about 50 or 60 delegates, but representing 17 countries from around the world. And we brought together practitioners from both the peace building and the mental health field, and we started having a conversation about how collaboration might look. And so this is really what our paper is all about. So just very briefly, we feel that peace building and mental health and psychosocial support as fields in actual fact have many sort of ideological overlaps. The one is about improving the overall social well-being of communities. The other one is on improving the well-being of individuals, families, and communities. So there's a lot of overlap in what they're both trying to achieve, and yet in terms of coordination, and integrating frameworks in order to sustainably sort of address conflict and build peace, that just really isn't happening yet. So that's the site where the report is. You can also find it through the IJR website. Yeah. Next one. Yes, please. So sort of the central needs that we've identified in this very lengthy paper, in which we also go into sort of common definitions, which were sort of discussed at the meeting, is one, that we need improved coordination and cooperation, but in order to do this we need a more integrated post-conflict reconstruction framework. And I certainly think that Barry's peace building wheel, and we've spoken about the ecological model as well, are possible ways in which we can do that. So Marian's going to go next. At the conference, we identified a number of key themes that emerged from presentations from practitioners that were coming from, and academics that were coming from both disciplines. And so these are the main themes. There are sort of, half-page descriptions of them in the report, and we're just going to touch very briefly on them.
Yes, I only will talk about the first 4. So if you want, and only very shortly, so if you want to read more, then you have to go to the report. Because these are the themes that are formulated by peace builders and mental and psychosocial health workers together, and included that way. So the first one, recognizing the centrality and the complexity of the context, what we all recognize that it's very important that you keep the context in mind. If you only focus on the atrocities or the series of atrocities, then you forget that most of the feeling of the trauma or how people are living is shaped by daily things, poverty, ongoing structural violence, human rights violence. So those are to be in. So you have to analyze and assess the whole context and not only the traumatic events or the things which are connected with that. The second one is the cultural construction of mental health. Well, Nancy also talked a little bit about it. I think it's very dangerous to talk about disorders and trauma. To give an example, in China, it's not about trauma, but in China they didn't talk about depression in the past. If someone had the symptoms of a depression, there was a social solution. It was an interpersonal problem, and we Western have introduced depression and the pharmacy, and they are now the biggest users of antidepressant of the world. So we have to be aware that it is very Western shaped our way of thinking of mental health, and that if you really want to do something, you have to connect with the local people and to see what they think is normal and not normal, and what is healthy and not healthy, and that might be something different for us. And the same in this is that if we use all these tools to see if someone have a depression or what, even if they are validated for the local settings, and still you might not catch the real feelings of the people because they have other definitions than we have. So this is important, I think, to think of. And I really also think what is a problem is that we very much focus on the psychological problems and not on what Nancy already mentioned, the traumatic role. So trauma is not only negative, it can have positive elements, and it's good to have a look at that. And another issue is that we have, I think I looked at the barriers you were talking, and I'm not quite sure, but I think one was missing, and that's that we have sometimes different definitions. To give an example, someone was talking about trauma. Someone was doing peace building in South Sudan and said, everybody is traumatized. Then as someone from a medical background said, no, it's impossible. Everybody had a traumatic event maybe, but is not traumatized. You see, if you are not clear about definitions, you will come in Babylon, I'm afraid. Okay, the third one is understanding and building local resources. Well, we think it's very important to learn from the people in a local setting. They do have resources, and they do try or had tried something, and we have to connect to that, and not to be the persons who come and bring the solution. Otherwise it will not last, I think. And now the last one, the role of narrative and memories formation and identity. Well, we have discussed this a lot, I think, and I only want to say one thing about this, and that's what Hannah Arendt says in her book. She said, feeling connected to other people is the most important but often neglected need of human beings, and I think that should be our attention very much. So far, very shortly about the key themes which came out of the conference, and we now don't want to talk anymore. We would really love to discuss. It's the same as Barry also wants, so we are in the same line, to discuss. Do you have examples? Do you have ideas about a theoretical framework, examples of good practices or brilliant failures, how to mention it? I think those often learn you more than the good practices. So, if it is okay, we would like to open the floor for discussion. Yes. And maybe you can...
Okay, so we'd like to invite our panelists and journalists, presenters